I'm not a complicated man. I like cinema.
Spent that whole summer with me in my room watching movies every day.
I love the movies.
I love the movies.
I love the movies.
Welcome
to
the house
of 1,000 movies.
All right, guys, here we go. First episode of the new podcast. If you're listening to this, thank you, because I know I had another podcast. I restarted it. This is all brand new. We're starting over. So huge thank you. And welcome to House of 1,000 Movies. This is my new podcast. It's a new format. It's a new style. It's going to be a lot more fun for me personally. Now, in today's episode, we're going to start the podcast off right with my favorite movie of all time, Jaws. I'm a huge Jaws fan. You can see right here, if you're watching on YouTube, I have this incredible Jaws shirt. Shout out to our sponsor, Threadheads. You can use the code in my video description or the podcast description. You get 15% off your order. But they have dope shirts like this. I have a ton of Jaws memorabilia. I have a ton of Jaws merchandise. I have every release of Jaws ever on physical media, all the way back to the original DiscoVision Laserdisc. It's my favorite movie. I absolutely love it. And I also think it's the greatest movie ever made, honestly, American or otherwise. Definitely the greatest American movie ever made. And granted, I haven't seen every foreign film. I haven't seen every American film. But for my money, I think it's the best movie ever made. It's just an incredible film. And I can't wait to talk about it. So the format for all these episodes is going to be pretty similar, right? We're going to start off with a little bit of background on the production of the movie, how it got made, if there was any interesting stories there, and then the box office and any sort of cultural impact it had. Then we'll dive into the cast and the crew. I want to highlight some of those lesser known people. Everybody knows Steven Spielberg. Everybody knows, Richard Dreyfuss and Robert Shaw. We'll talk about them, but I also want to highlight some of the cinematographers and the editors and some of those behind the scenes people that don't always get as much credit. Then I'm just going to talk about the film, why I love it, give a little bit of analysis, maybe give some of my, hot takes or opinions on certain films, maybe have you thinking about films in a different way, a different perspective. That'll be kind of the meat of the podcast, right? Is me or potentially sometimes with a guest talking through that. And then we'll get into where it's available on physical media and streaming services. And finally, some fun facts and trivia, because that's my favorite thing to do is hop on IMDb after I watch a movie and look at the movie trivia. I love the kind of notes in there. So let's kick things off with a little bit of background on Jaws, right? So Jaws was released in the summer of 1975, and it was immediately a landmark moment in cinema. Steven Spielberg was behind the helm as the director. It was adapted from Peter Benchley's best-selling novel, which was a huge success only a year earlier, 1974. So a very quick turnaround that this movie got made. And you know the story. It's a coastal community during the holiday summer season, 4th of July weekend, just being terrorized by a giant man-eating shark. Now, on the production side of things, there's actually a couple of interesting things. First, filmed on Martha's Vineyard, Massachusetts, right? So right off the coast of Cape Cod in Massachusetts. If you know where Nantucket is, it's very close to that. Maybe more people know Nantucket than Martha's Vineyard, but I love Martha's Vineyard. I like it a lot more than Nantucket. I don't know. It feels more down to earth to me. Feels more like my speed when I go there. And I've been many times. I've seen all the filming locations. I've been on the ferry that takes them across the island. I've been to the lighthouse. I've been, everywhere this was filmed. And I've swam in the waters where Bruce the shark was potentially working some of the time during the filming. So it's a really special place for me. It's like a life goal to retire there. Hopefully it literally, like, the island still exists in 30 years, but it's a beautiful island. If you've never been, honestly looks a lot like it did in 1975, and a lot of the buildings and a lot of the things you see in the movie are still there. So it's a really cool snapshot. Now, Jaws was actually the first picture to ever be shot completely on the ocean. Like, they shot this on the open ocean. They went out into the coast and they went out to the water, and they had this mechanical shark and all the actors and everything just out in the ocean. No sets here. They were doing it in the Atlantic Ocean. And that obviously caused a lot of problems. You put a mechanical shark, 20 feet long, whatever it was, in the water, rough seas, it's cold, salt water, lots of things can go wrong, and they did. But it ended up turning into a kind of blessing in disguise, because although the shark didn't work nearly as much as Joe Alvis, who designed the shark, would have wanted it to, it became kind of iconic that the shark only shows up in a few scenes, because it kind of lets you use your own imagination and builds that scare even more. Now, despite all those setbacks, led to budget increases. It got kind of crazy. Spielberg's, determination prevailed, and it had a masterful, just final cut, with suspense, community drama, terror. And when it hit theaters, it was an instant hit. It broke every box office record. It became the highest grossing film of all time. It literally created the summer blockbuster. Like, movies coming out in the summer were, that was a consistent thing. Movies came out all year, but saving your big movies for the summer to hit that blockbuster time, that was all new. That was because of Jaws. And honestly, although Spielberg had done some kind of cool stuff up to this point, Jaws is what just put him on the map permanently and kickstarted his whole career. And just culturally speaking, the movie had a massive impact on the way people viewed sharks, for better or worse, many times for worse. People, the shark populations were hit hard after Jaws. People were killing sharks. There's still a conservation effort out there. Shout out to Eli Roth. He does a ton of work actually on shark conservation. They are way more endangered than they should be. And a lot of it is honestly because of negative stereotypes from movies like Jaws or other shark movies. But they're actually incredible creatures. I love them. I would love to see one in person. I've never seen a great white shark. Trust me, I've tried. I've gone to the Cape many, many times, gone out on boats praying that I see one. Never have, but it would be an incredible moment in my life to see one. And, that legacy of the film, although that side of it is a little more negative, unintended, Peter Benchley, nobody wanted that to be what happened. And a lot of them actually worked on conservation efforts afterwards, feeling bad about it. But it's just an amazing horror, drama, thriller, suspense, community movie. I don't know. There's so many different aspects of it. It's perfectly American in a way too. Now, of course, behind the camera, he had Spielberg, right? He was running the show, but he had an incredible team on this. So let's dive into some of the cast and crew that you maybe don't know about. First up, you get cinematographer Bill Butler. Now, he's known for kind of his really interesting use of lights and shadows, and he played a really crucial role in developing this beauty of the ocean's depths. And this was not an easy thing to do with cameras of the time period shooting in the water. You had to get really creative with a lot of this stuff. And there's obviously these iconic moments in the water, deep in the water, Hooper in the shark cage, the head floating out of the boat. It's one of the best jump scares ever. Like, these are all created by Butler and his kind of vision that he had for this, which just immersed audiences in this terrifying world of suspense and dread, and had that the dolly zoom and so many iconic camera effects. I mean, he went for it, and he also had a great career. He goes way back before Jaws. He worked on The Godfather. He worked on The Conversation. He worked on One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. Actually won an Oscar for that, and then he just kind of kept working. He collaborated with Spielberg. He worked with a few other people, but actually died kind of young, sadly. Now, one person who doesn't get talked about enough when it comes to Jaws is the editor, Verna Fields, who is like, you want to talk about like an original girl boss babe. Like, I don't mean that in any disrespectful way. Like, she ran shit. And the way Jaws is edited, it's the pacing of it, which is, I think, perfect. The attention to detail, all the tension that comes from the different shots and the different cuts, like, that's her. That was her editing prowess. And she really was kind of like a mentor to Spielberg in a way. She had a lot of guidance for him throughout the production process, had a really good eye for storytelling, had this really collaborative spirit, and was just incredibly instrumental in helping Spielberg and the rest of the cast and crew kind of realize their vision. She saw it before it even got filmed. Like, how would I cut this? How would I edit this? And she's also very notable because she actually rose up to be a VP, was the first woman executive at any of the major studios when she got to the VP level. I think it was Universal. So incredibly powerful, intelligent, strong woman who owned this industry. Doesn't get talked about nearly enough. Died young, again, 64, tragically young for that time period, but just had an incredible impact on film when she was around. And then, of course, you can't talk about Jaws without talking about John Williams. At this point in time, John Williams, he was known, but wasn't huge. And Jaws, again, kind of like it put Spielberg on the map, put John Williams on the map. And John Williams is maybe the most amazing, celebrated, the GOAT film composer, if you want to put it that way, the greatest of all time. The score for Jaws, of course, iconic. Everybody knows. My 2.5-year-old son knows. For some reason, he saw a shark on TV the other day and started going dun 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 dun. Like, where he picked that up, he's never seen Jaws. I have no idea, but it's that iconic that, like, he probably heard it in a TV show, or he heard it when I was playing something, but he knew, he made that connection right away. It's that iconic that it captures a 2-year-old's attention. and the suspense and, that terrifying kind of vision that, our team had, editor, cinematographer, director, none of that truly comes together without great music behind it. And we have John Williams to thank for. And then, of course, he's gone on to have an incredible career, 5 Academy Awards, over 50 Oscar nominations, which is just like nuts. Like, that's Meryl Streep ridiculousness. And then obviously worked with Spielberg on a ton of stuff, did Star Wars, worked on E.T., worked on Indiana Jones. I mean, he's been everywhere. And then, of course, our cast, right? Our cast. And, everybody, Richard Dreyfuss went on to have a really great career. Robert Shaw, unfortunately, who played Quint, didn't live much longer past Jaws, which is a real shame because I think he would have been even more incredible as he aged. He could have been somebody, like a De Niro who's still making incredible movies well into his 70s or even 80s, or a Clint Eastwood or something like that hurts that he died so young. And Roy Scheider, who played Chief Brody, also died young-ish. He wasn't super old. And little fun fact about me in Jaws, Roy Scheider and I have the same birthday, November 10th. So I guess it was always meant to be. I was born on Chief Brody's birthday. I spent every summer of my youth on the Cape. I was in those waters where they shot the film. It just, I don't know, it all lined up. Maybe that's why I like it so much. But for the three of them, honestly, I think most people still think Jaws when they think about them. Like Richard Dreyfuss, you can make an argument for Close Encounters of the Third Kind. He's done some other films too, Dr. Holland's Opus, but I think it's still Jaws. It's Hooper. You see Richard Dreyfuss and you think Jaws. You see Roy Scheider, you think Jaws. You think Chief Brody. And when you see Robert Shaw, although he was in so many great films, he was in the Taking of Pelham 123. He was in The Sting, which is another amazing movie. Like, he had a really good run actually in like the early 70s. I see Quint. I think Quint's one of the greatest characters in film history, and that's what I see. I don't know if you guys see that, but I think that's what most people see. And another quick fun fact about the cast. Some of the people in the cast were just islanders who still live there today. They were locals. In fact, one of the two kids who in the kind of famous scene, they're swimming around right after the police have been sent out in the waters to try to find the shark. And they have the like cardboard shark fins on their heads, and they pop up out of the water, and everybody, all the police have their guns pointed at them, ready to blow them away. One of those kids, interestingly enough, is actually now police chief on Martha's Vineyard. So was a local, got in the movie as an extra. He's now police chief. So he went from having all the guns pointed at him to, potentially in a Jaws remake, which hopefully they never do, he could be one of the guys on the boat pointing down at the kids because he's now chief of that whole island, which is really cool. And there were so many other local extras as well who got involved in the project. Now, for me, I just love Jaws for a few reasons. Obviously, there's the nostalgic thing, right? I've touched on this, but I grew up every summer. My grandparents, my mom's parents had a house on Cape Cod. And if you know Cape Cod, they had a house in Eastham, which is right next to Wellfleet and Orleans. And if you've heard of Nauset Beach or Nauset Light or Coast Guard Beach, Marconi Beach, it's all in that area. Those were the beaches we went to. And it's funny because when I was a kid growing up, there were no sharks. There were sharks in the Cape's waters, but there were not great white sharks. You weren't worried about that. I would jump in the water as a kid. We'd go body surfing, boogie boarding, whatever. You'd swim in that water, no issue. Now, they're everywhere. The water got warmer. The seal population grew. The sharks came up. And when I was probably in like college, they started having an issue with it. And now those beaches that I just named in that area, that's actually the hotspot. Chatham. I went to Chatham quite a bit. We were down right there on that elbow of the Cape. And if you go on the ocean side of the Cape on all those beaches, it is shark central. They spot sharks there multiple times a week, great whites, very large ones. So it's become, this kind of crazy, film becomes reality. Nobody in 1975 would have predicted that there were great white sharks all over the Cape and in Martha's Vineyard or one of those coastal communities, in the Northeast. But now there are, and it's a sad reality. And in fact, people have been attacked and unfortunately killed. One guy got killed in a shark attack off the Cape a few years back. Somebody got killed in Maine, way up on the coast of Maine a few years back in a shark attack. So they're all over New England now. you definitely have to pay attention. It's scary out there, and hey, it's their water, it's their environment. So my stance is, I'm not supposed to be in the ocean. They are. So I'm going to let the stuff that's in the ocean stay in the ocean. I'll get on a boat, but I don't do so much swimming in those waters anymore. Not for me. Find me a lake, find me a river. I'm much happier there. Or a pool. That'd be great too. No sharks in a pool. But this movie was extremely formative for me because I was down there, right? And I don't want to sound like some rich kid. Like, my grandparents are both public school teachers. It was a different time. My grandfather worked like 3 jobs. He saved a ton of money. They earned that Cape house. They worked for it. Nobody handed it to them. So I was not some like rich kid on the Cape. We didn't live on the water. We lived, in a couple miles away. It was a beautiful location either way. I was so lucky. But being down there, we watched movies. Everybody loved movies. They had a VHS collection down there, and Jaws was one of them. King Kong was another that I watched. But I watched Jaws on VHS when I was probably like, I don't know, somewhere between 5 to 7, because I remember watching it and I distinctly remember the case art and what it looked like. But I'm not like old enough to like fully remember. So it was somewhere in there where like you kind of have these fuzzy memories of it, but you don't fully know. And I watched it, and then, I went and swam in the same waters an hour later, not thinking anything of it. Literally the water where they filmed it was where I was swimming, just a little bit across the water over to the island, but we were in the same body of water. Maybe, I don't know how far it is, 20 miles away. Like, that was it. I was in those waters, and it just didn't faze me. But that's what I loved about it so much. It just fascinated me, and I loved sharks and dinosaurs growing up and anything like that. So Jaws just gripped me and just honestly never let go. The other thing I've really come to love about it as I got older is obviously the performances, the characters. Like, when you're younger, you're watching it and you're like, cool shark movie. As I'm older and I'm watching it, I want more of Quint. Like, every time Quint's on screen, I want more of that. I love the dynamic between Hooper, Brody, Quint. I love the dynamic between the mayor, played by Murray Hamilton. That whole thing. And then the way that Brody deals with his kids now being a dad, I'm like, oh, I get that. I feel the same way about my kids going in that water today that he felt then. I've kind of become a Chief Brody in a way. But I love this like purely American commentary that I don't know if the film gives on purpose or not, but it's unique because it's so American that, hey, this idea that people are literally dying, right? People are getting killed, murdered brutally. I don't know if you can call it murdered if you get killed by a shark, but they're getting brutally killed. And instead of hurt anybody's business or potentially lose a few dollars to the town, we're going to take that risk and just, well, if people die, they die. You know what I mean? It's like, we're going to stay open. We're not going to fix this. We're not going to solve it. We're going to stay open, push it under the rug, and keep everything open so that we can make our money. It's like, pure capitalism at its worst. We got to make money, so people are going to die. That is as American, unfortunately, as it gets. And it's become more apparent to me watching it as I've gotten older, like how common that theme is within Jaws, that kind of just ignorance and deference to everything capitalism. We're doing this for the money, and the people in charge here, they understand it. Hooper, Brody, they're like, you got to shut it down. But even Quint is only going out to kill the shark for money. It's very like a capitalistic film. It's very American in that way. And the other really cool thing that's developed over the last few years is that this like real life Jaws adventure is happening on the Cape right now in real life. So there's actually a great documentary, I think on HBO or Max or whatever they're calling it this week, where there's a bunch of people on the Cape right now who are like fighting to try to, cull the seal population a bit, try to get the sharks away. It's hurting business. It's hurting tourism. It's doing all the things that they talked about in 1975 in the movie. That's happening on the Cape. Like, rentals are down, beach visits are down, restaurants are down. People are afraid to go there. They have a reputation now for being shark country, which is really interesting. And the people in the community are trying to figure out how to reverse that. What are the steps we can take? Is there shark proofing? Are there nets? Are there devices we can put in the water? What can we do to make people feel safe? And there's actually like huge town meetings and community meetings about this, very much like there was in Jaws. So it's a really super, super interesting time to rewatch Jaws if you want to learn a little bit of what's going on right now in those communities, because they are like interconnected. It's like Spielberg saw the future. And finally, like the other thing I love about this is the way that it's kind of split into two stories in a way. It feels almost like Full Metal Jacket, and I've come to like it's the first half of the movie is community drama, thriller, borderline like slasher movie as these bodies keep piling up, and they can't figure out what's doing it, who's doing it. There's like that element to it. It is a bit of a slasher in that way, at least like a 70s slasher. Not a huge body count, but it's all about the community. It's all about Brody, Hooper, trying to figure out what's going on, working with the mayor. The mayor's fighting back. The people in the community don't want the stores to close. They don't want the restaurants to close. They don't want to lose their business, but they also don't want to get killed. And then you've got, Mrs. Kintner, just her whole thing with her son getting killed. That changes the whole dynamic of the town, but there's still this kind of hesitation. Can we break this? Can we not? Do we need to close the beaches? It's very much like this tightly knit community going through a really traumatic time period. And that's the first half of the movie. It is, what boot camp was for Full Metal Jacket. Like it's the setup, but it's almost its own movie. There's very little that's happening out on the water. Most of the film is taking place, either right on the beaches, very shallow water, or within the town. Very few scenes that go out open ocean. And then it shifts, right? Once you bring in Quint, once they make that shift and they say, okay, we got to do something, then it becomes like Spielberg action adventure that he's become most well known for. So he kind of has two different movies, and then that's Vietnam and Full Metal Jacket. We're out of boot camp, we're into Vietnam. And that second half of the movie is then, of course, it's basically three guys on a boat versus a shark. There's nobody else from that time that they leave the harbor. You do not see another character, actor, anybody on screen. That's it. It's those three guys for the last 45 minutes of the movie. Three guys and a shark. That's it. Which I don't think people realize like how truly difficult that is. It's basically like this like one location film, right? They only have the boat to work with as a set. They have three characters, and then they got the open ocean and nothing else. And the fact that that captivates you so much is a testament to, the script, the actors, the team behind it, the cast and the crew, everybody who worked on this, put together a perfect second half to this movie that is just as thrilling as the first half, which is full of extras and characters and is constantly moving, changing scenes, changing shots, different locations. And then it still keeps you enthralled for the last half. And this is where you start to see truly the shark kind of bare its teeth, no pun intended, but like this is the shark coming out, making its appearance, having its moment is in the second half. Up until that point, we've had glimpses, mostly under the water, and honestly haven't seen much other than the poor guy in the rowboat who gets taken out. We don't get a full body view of that shark. So I love that split because I think it keeps you super engaged. Like you could have made a 2-hour movie about guys hunting down a shark, and I don't think it would have worked. But you also couldn't make a 2-hour movie about just people arguing in a community about a shark. You have to mix them, and they easily could have mixed that all into one story. It could have been they were out in the water, and then it cuts back to the community and what they're trying to deal with. But they just split it really hard down the middle, and I love that. And I do want to comment quickly, if you've read the book Jaws by Peter Benchley, which this may surprise you, I only read it for the first time like 3 years ago because I loved the movie. So I was like, I don't need to read the book. You should read the book because the book's actually really, really good and expands on a lot of like, I don't know what you want to call it, lore in the Jaws Amity Island world. But it's very different. It involves a whole like affair with Brody's wife, and I think it's Hooper in the book if I'm remembering correctly, but there's a whole affair situation there, which is where some of that tension between Brody and Hooper comes from in the book. There's a whole like mafia subplot, like part of the reason why the mayor is being pressured, he doesn't want to shut down the island and close the beaches, like there's this mafia pressure that he's getting. There's a whole kind of mob aspect to it, but other than that, a lot of it is the same. It's just I actually kind of like that Peter Benchley wrote the movie too, because it was almost like he got a second chance to write his book. And I think he was like, hey, some of this stuff doesn't translate well. Some of it, it wasn't super important to the story. And I felt that way reading the book. I was like, it's nice that there's a little bit of extra context here, but it really doesn't add much. And in a visual medium versus a written medium, you can kind of convey the tension and between Brody, Hooper, and Quint, which naturally developed because Robert Shaw and Richard Dreyfuss were at each other's necks throughout filming. But you can just kind of convey that in a different way. You don't need the explanation of, hey, why is the mayor so like crazy and stuff? And you don't need that backstory. It's like, well, he's the mayor and he's kind of like a used car salesman and he wants to make his money, and that's just easy. We don't need to start involving mafia mob subplots and kind of ballooning this out of proportion. We keep it nice and tight to the community, to these core characters. And I really appreciate that. That must not have been easy, considering Jaws was a huge bestseller and Benchley had only released it a year before the movie came out. I think it's pretty impressive to take like a hard second look at your movie like that and just go back and kind of redo it and be able to adapt it for the screen. And yeah, he had help, like for sure. He had another writer with him who actually was a comedy writer, Bill Gottlieb. So interesting, because there are some comedic aspects to Jaws for sure. Like that's also part of what makes it great. There's comedy, there's thrills, suspense, jump scares, horror. It's got everything. But I think it was really big of Peter Benchley to kind of say, hey, yeah, some of what was in my book just isn't going to translate, and I think we should do it differently. And I give him a lot of props for that, because if he went in a different direction with the screenplay, who knows what Jaws may have become. And I think as it is, it's perfect in that hard split right in the middle of the movie. You got a first half, you get a second half. It's just, it gives you everything you'd want. And that Spielberg adventure, a couple guys on a boat, like that is, watch his older stuff or like stuff that came after Jaws, and you're like, oh, this totally could have been, Indiana Jones and, whatever, his couple of sidekicks, whatever, whoever he had in that movie. This totally could have been like the kids from, E.T. out in a boat, like, fighting a giant fish or something in a local lake. Like, you see that adventure aspect and that tight knit kind of collaboration between characters in everything Spielberg does. I mean, it's Jurassic Park. It's them in the park, fighting the raptors at the end of the movie and trying to survive. I mean, that's Jaws. All of that comes from like Jaws. He kind of got his style almost from this movie. So that's my take. Obviously, I love it. It's my favorite. I mean, I will buy anything and everything about related to Jaws, and next year 2025 is its 50th anniversary. I'm really hoping Martha's Vineyard comes together and does a Jaws fest. They haven't done one in many years. If they do, I'm there. I don't care how much the tickets cost. I'm there on the island. I'm getting a place. It's going to be an incredible event. I think like the local boards have to vote it all through, but if you're interested, next year is the 50th anniversary. So not only should there hopefully be a big event on Martha's Vineyard, but hopefully there are like other screenings happening, maybe some other cool events at cons or local theaters or whatever. Like, it should be celebrated. 50 years. It's been an incredible run. Now, if you want to watch it in between now and then, or a potential screening, there's a few ways you can watch it. Of course, physical media, my favorite. I've got a huge movie collection. That's why the podcast is called House of 1,000 Movies. And you can get Jaws in pretty much any format. You can get it on Laserdisc. You can get it on VHS. You can get it on DVD. You can get it on Blu-ray. You can get it on 4K Ultra HD Blu-ray. Right now, the 4K Ultra HD, it's the best way to watch it. It looks incredible. It's an amazing restoration. If you get the Blu-ray, it has the same restoration, minus a few things, minus some of the HDR color, minus some of the new audio. So it's a minor step back, but still looks amazing because it was fully restored in 2012. So that's the best way to watch it. And just pulling up right now, I go to justwatch.com. That's my go-to for where something's streaming. And it's kind of crazy. This movie, which I think is the greatest of all time, is not streaming for free anywhere. So, props to physical media. That's the best way to watch it. It's not streaming anywhere. So if you want to watch this on a digital platform, it's on all the big ones, the Prime Video, Apple TV, Google Play, YouTube, Vudu, you name it. You can rent it for $3.99. You can buy it for like $12 to $15. But I don't know, if you're going to spend that much money, even $4, the 4K release has been routinely on sale for like $7 or $8. And if you want the Blu-ray, I'm pretty sure you can buy that for $5. So it's the same price as renting it. And I highly recommend watching it on one of those formats because it's a different experience. The sound, the quality, everything is a lot better. And that's where you should watch it. And there's a lot of really cool packaging options for you. There's like steelbooks, which are really collectible. There's like, digibooks in book formats that look like kind of hardcover books. There's just standard editions. There's one with a really cool lenticular cover on it, which goes back and forth and looks great. There's also a premium release that came out over in the UK. I don't know if that's still available from the Film Vault, but it's widely celebrated, widely available. I'm sure if you walk into a pawn shop and pretty much anywhere in the country, you could find at least a DVD of it for probably 50 cents, if not the Blu-ray for a couple of bucks. And that's my preferred way to watch it. Trust me, that restoration, I don't know what kind of quality you're getting across all these different digital platforms when you buy it. It looks like Apple TV will give you the 4K version, but it's still not going to beat the disc. If you can get the disc, that's the way to go. I'll always advocate for the disc for the most part, but I understand convenience. In this case, there is no convenience. If you have to spend money to watch it either way, buy the disc. So here's a couple fun facts now. A little trivia, some fun facts. We'll go through a couple of them, but according to writer Carl Gottlieb, who I mentioned previously, he was the co-writer with Peter Benchley. Roy Scheider actually ad-libbed the line, "You're going to need a bigger boat," which also is widely misquoted as "we're going to need a bigger boat." It is "you're going to need a bigger boat," and he ad-libbed that. So, I mean, maybe it's like a top 5 iconic line in movie history. Like, "Luke, I'm your father," which also is misquoted. And I think I just misquoted it there. "You're going to need a bigger boat," "play it again." Like, there's a couple that are iconic, and this is definitely one of them. Another fun fact is there's actually 2 really interesting cameos in the movie. The first one is Peter Benchley, who wrote the book. He is actually the reporter who is on the beach. Kind of in the end of the first third of the movie, there's a reporter on the beach kind of reporting about, hey, there was potentially an attack, but we're here. It's 4th of July weekend. We're having fun. The beaches are open, blah, blah, blah. That's Peter Benchley. He's wearing I think a tweed suit coat kind of thing. He's got glasses on. So he's the author. He actually has a speaking line. Sometimes cameos are just like, whatever, let's just throw the author in the background. Like, he actually holds a scene. I thought he did a pretty good job. And then there is a director cameo, Steven Spielberg, but not visually. It's just his voice. So when Quint's radio comes on, when it's Chief Brody's wife, Mrs. Brody, tries to contact her husband when they're out on the Orca, that is actually Steven Spielberg's voice. He's the one who's trying to relay that message out to the Orca before Quint smashes it to bits. And then finally, this is probably the most fascinating thing about the movie, and we mentioned this, but the shark only has 4 minutes of screen time. Now, this movie is how long? This movie is, I think it's pushing 2 hours off the top of my head. I'm trying to find the length. Yeah, 2 hours and 4 minutes. So there you go. The movie is 2 hours and 4 minutes, and the shark only gets 4 minutes of screen time. But think about what you think when you think of Jaws, that iconic poster. You think about the shark, you think about the attacks. It's all about the shark, right? That's what you think. But then when you really watch it and you watch this movie and you kind of dive into it, it's not really about the shark. It's a character study. It's a really interesting look into American communities, beachside communities, capitalism at its worst. It's a thriller. It's a mystery. It's a little bit of a drama. I mean, it's so much less than a shark attack movie. And like the movies that have come out after this, like all these Jaws knockoffs, or even just inspired by Jaws, like Piranha or Orca, or all the kind of Italian like Deep Blood and Cruel Jaws and all these other crazy, even, Deep Blue Sea or 47 Meters Down or The Meg. Like, the shark is always the focal point, or the animal is always the focal point, the killer. And none of them capture the same magic that Jaws captured, because it's not about the shark. Jaws is just a great drama that happens to involve a shark. And I think that is what makes it so great. 4 minutes of screen time for, one of the most iconic movie villains ever. I mean, it's up there with like Hannibal Lecter, but even he has like 15 minutes of screen time in that movie, although it's short. It's just what an impact you can make in such a short time when you have this terrifying character. As long as the rest of the movie builds it up, it's just an incredible way to shoot. So Spielberg, the whole crew, although it's maybe not the movie they wanted to make when they set out to make it, should get a lot of credit for doing what they did and making it work, because they almost had to make a better movie without having the shark in there for so long. So that's it for me on this one. That's Jaws. That's little, most of these episodes I'll say they'll be like 40-ish minutes to 45 minutes. I don't want anything too long. I want something you can listen to, commuting to work, doing the dishes, making dinner, whatever. While you're working, you can binge these. But I want them to be kind of short and sweet. No reason to kind of drag them out and go for hours and hours on a topic. I want to just get my thoughts out there, let you guys enjoy it, put it in an audio and video format so you can listen, watch anywhere. And that's what you get here. So Jaws, my favorite movie, first episode. I appreciate you all who came out for this one. If you're watching on YouTube, of course, you can subscribe to the channel. You'll get all the episodes on YouTube. They'll all be video recorded. Nothing's gated behind a paywall. If you want to watch the video, that's completely free for you to watch, and it's on YouTube. And if you want to listen to just the audio version, it will be everywhere, also completely free. Spotify, Apple Podcasts, you name it, on the Playlist app. Shout out to Playlist, who's producing this with me. So no matter where you want to go, you can get access to this video, audio. And that's what I love about doing the podcasting. It's super cool to have that option. So I appreciate you all listening or watching, no matter which format you're on. It all matters, and I appreciate it all. And because this is free content, I didn't really have a sponsor for this episode. I will shout out Threadheads again. If you're watching, you can see my Jaws shirt. They have incredible pop culture shirts. I just got this Jaws one. I got a Godzilla one with like a Japanese print. I got Jason Takes Manhattan. I got an awesome Exorcist shirt, and they have a ton of other cool pop culture shirts too, not just movies. But you can get 15% off with my code, and that does help support me and the podcast. They're not paying me for an ad read, but we have sponsors like that, and we will have sponsors from time to time. So I just want to say thank you to the sponsors, thank you to everybody, because we're going to keep this content free. So if you can support the sponsors, that helps, that goes a long way. But thank you all again for watching. Thank you for listening. Thank you for indulging in Jaws with me, for going on this journey with me. We have so many more great episodes coming. I am going to cover a ton of movies. And like I said, some will be with guests. In fact, I'll give you a little teaser right now. Elliot Cohen and myself, Elliot's from the Boutique Blu-rays with Elliot Cohen YouTube channel. We did Vertigo. We recorded that one recently, and that's going to be an episode. It'll be all about Vertigo, which honestly, I've only seen a couple times, and Elliot has seen probably 50. So I relied on him heavily. But we're going to have other guests like that who talk about favorite movies and do the same format. We're going to have directors. We're going to have actors. We're going to have editors, people involved in the film, people in the industry. We're going to have a whole bunch of people as guests from time to time, but it'll be 50-50. A lot of it's just going to be me talking about movies, and I hope you guys enjoy it. But thank you again. Hope you have a great rest of your day. Keep watching great movies. Keep listening to this and watching the YouTube channel. Appreciate you all who do. Make sure you sign up for my email list so you never miss an update. All that good stuff. Everything's in the video episode description. So go down there, check it out, and I'll talk to you guys next time. Hey there, movie buff. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of House of 1,000 Movies. I hope you had as much fun listening as I did discussing some of my favorite films. Don't forget, if you're into video podcasts, you can head over to the YouTube channel and hit the subscribe button. If you're already on YouTube, it's right there, so why not hit it? And for our audio listeners, make sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform so you never miss an episode. If you've been enjoying the show, why not show me some love by leaving a 5-star review? It really helps me out, and it lets me know that I'm hitting the mark. And hey, before you go, a quick shout out to our sponsors. By supporting them, you're not just supporting the show, but also the content you love. Thanks again for joining me in the House of 1,000 Movies. Until next time, keep watching, keep listening, and keep watching great movies. Take care, everyone.